The 2020 Indian Scout Bobber 60. Indian Motorcycle treats us to a mid-year release with its new, stripped-down Scout Bobber 60. Crisp and clean, the Scout Bobber 60 rolls with the essentials plus some minimally intrusive safety electronics, all powered by the proven, 78 horsepower, 60 plant. Blackout is the word of the day for the Scout Bobber 60 as it expands the Scout lineup into the less than $10,000 territory. 2020 Indian Scout Bobber 60 design. This new Scout Bobber 60 shares a significant number of similarities with the regular Scout Bobber. It starts out with chopped down sheet metal over both the front and rear wheels to establish that bobber look, and it continues on into custom territory with ample blackout treatment the whole bike over. The absolute dearth of chrome, glossy black sheet metal, and matte black treatment adds to the custom vibe started by the bobbed fenders. Forks, sliders, triple tree, headlight can, and instrument housing are all monochromatic as well to match the radiator grille, drivetrain, and exhaust. A single, round analog gauge serves as the speedometer with a handful of LED idiot lights and an LCD screen contained within to cover all the pertinent metrics. Behind the blackout handlebar and mirrors, the 3.3-gallon fuel tank has a swoopy teardrop shape that adds more to the custom vibe with a touch of old school to boot, and it defines a flyline that continues down a hardtail-like backbone angle to the solo saddle. While this isn't quite a faux rigid construct like the Harley-Davidson Softail or Triumph's Bonneville Bobber, the frame geometry and rear shock configuration does lend it a bit of a hardtail look. The rear fender is chopped down to the max and barely meets the end of the fender struts with an LED taillight and blackout, bullet-style turn signal housings to match the front blinkers. On the right side, the paired mufflers seek to channel the look of the old shotgun exhaust to finish the old-school panache. Between the blackout treatment and utter lack of embellishments, the Scout Bobber 60 presents itself with nothing in the way of superfluous equipment or vanity items, just the basics, and that helps keep the sticker shock down. 2020 Indian Scout Bobber 60 chassis. Indian takes steps to keep weight down on the Scout Bobber 60 with a cast aluminum frame that mimics the geometry of the old hardtails. The steering head establishes a rake angle of 29 degrees with 4.7 inches of trail to strike a balance between crosswind tracking and corner attacking after it factors in with the 62-inch wheelbase. That's right. The engine might be at the bottom of the displacement range, but this is a full-size cruiser with all of the big bike feel you'd expect from the genre. Cast alloy wheels round out the rolling chassis with a 16-inch diameter front and rear and a glossy thunder black finish to match the sheet metal. The monochromatic treatment continues onto the sliders on the 41mm front forks and the dual coil-over shocks out back, and the suspension stroke measures at 4.7 inches up front and 3.0 inches out back, which is plenty for riding on civilized roads. As for the hoops, a 130/90 leads the way ahead of a 150/80 to provide a generous contact patch at both ends of the machine. Since this is a stripped-down model with a wet weight of 548 pounds, a single, 298mm disc and twin-pod anchor are sufficient for the front brakes, as is the single-pot caliper and same-size rotor out back, especially since you can get it with a stock ABS feature. 2020 Indian Scout Bobber 60 drivetrain. The factory tapped its 61 cubic inch plant to power the Scout Bobber 60. Unlike the beautiful Thunderstroke engine family, this mill runs with a modern, 60-degree V-twin that shuns the cooling fins of its sibling in favor of a water jacket to manage the waste heat. Polished trim leaves it with the visual suggestion of the old parallel pushrod arrangement, but it's more of an artistic touch and isn't meant to fool anyone as it rocks over head cams to time the poppets. Normally I'd whinge a bit about the look of the radiator, but the black-on-black palette utterly swallows up the grille to make the radiator fairly inconspicuous overall. Bore and stroke mic out at 93mm and 73.6mm, respectively, for a 1000cc displacement and mid-range compression ratio of 11:1, so you can expect to use top-octane road champagne to prevent knock, ping, run-on. Dual exhaust with a crossover tube shares the power pulse between the two circuits to prevent exhaust gas reversion while keeping the restrictive back pressure factor low, and this lets the normally aspirated engine breathe relatively free. A single 54 mm throttle body controls the induction with closed-loop fuel injection, so you can count on an accurate stoichiometric ratio regardless of elevation, ambient pressure changes. But that's the end of the fandanglery. There is nothing in the way of traction control or power modes to muddy the waters, just straight-up, wrist-to-road throttle responses. A gear-type primary drive and multi-disc wet clutch carry the power to the 5-speed transmixer with a quiet, low-maintenance, carbon-reinforced belt for the final drive. The power figures are 78 horsepower and 65 pound-feet of torque, and top speed is clocked at a hair over 100 miles per hour. This is a tad short of the full-size Scout engine that pushes out speeds around 120 miles per hour, but honestly, an even 100 should be fast enough for public roads. If 100 miles per hour ain't fast enough for ya, you're looking at the wrong kind of bike. 2020 Indian Scout Bobber 60 price. The price point is definitely geared toward the entry-level folks, riders on a budget, and customizers looking for an affordable platform as a starting point for their motorcycle art project. At $8,999, the Thunder Black Glossy sticker reflects the smaller powerplant to make this a very accessible, American-style cruiser. If you want abs, you can add 8 Benjamins to that total in gloss black, but the matte finish Thunder Black Smoke bumps the checkout price up to $10,299. 2020 Indian Scout Bobber 60 competitors. It seems clear to me that the Scout Bobber 60 will appeal to the same sort of rider as Harley-Davidson's new for 2020 Softail Standard, so let's see how it stacks up. Harley-Davidson Softail Standard. Harley walks on the dark side with black-on-black paint, but it strikes something of a balance with some polished parts and a handful of chrome components to offset some of the existential void created by all that blackout. Bobbed fenders front and rear are a constant across the board for that homemade custom panache, and Harley takes it a step further with a set of mini apes that gives the Softail Standard even more custom chops. Both builders get credit for the tuck and roll cover on their solo seats, "cause that's some classy stuff," says IHD. Arguably gets a leg up on comfort and cornering performance with Shoei's dual bending valve stems up front that deliver a superior ride to the plain vanilla forks on the Scout, though the 30-degree rake and 6.2-inch trail trades eagerness in the corners for rock-solid tracking. The Moco scores again in the engine department with its Milwaukee 8107 that churns out a whopping 110 pounds-o grunt against 65 pound-feet from the Indian engine, and there's the trade-off. That and the price, of course. Harley asks $13,599 for its most cost-efficient cruiser, significantly more expensive than the $9,000 starting MSRP on the base Scout Bobber 60, and that's a difference that definitely makes a difference. Read our full review of the Harley-Davidson Softail Standard. He said, "I realize there is a power-speed difference between the 60 engine and the full-size Scout plant, but since 100 miles per hour is generally fast enough, I'd say Indian poses a serious threat to HD's efforts to expand downward in the price range. While the Blackout Bobber 60 is attractive in its own right, it just begs to be customized, and I expect that we'll start seeing some really sweet builds. And that right soon," she said. My wife and fellow motorcycle rider, Alan Hinton, says, "It looks like the offspring of a Scout Bobber and a Scout 60, which I'm sure is intentional as it kinda downsizes the Scout, but in engine size only. The cast frame gives it an industrial look that I really like, and like the Softail Standard, this is a no-frills bike that works as a base for all your customization dreams. It's big enough for tall riders, but small enough for height-challenged folks like me, and the weight feels balanced so it handles well, even at low speeds." 2020 Indian Scout Bobber 60 specifications.
If you liked this video, please share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.